Robert says only voters of the town of Sandgate can speak. I knew that wasn't going to go over well.
Power and authority are my middle name. And if I can lord it over 120 people, it's much better than lording it over any member of my family.
I really enjoyed the task and the position, and which I think surprises some people. A lot of people come and say, you know, why are you doing this? I can't imagine doing this.
You can't very well hold a town meeting where you're doing the town's business if it's going to be WrestleMania 10.
It's still important to them, and it's important to the process too, for people to get together and talk to each other.
The first couple of years, I probably knew 95% of the people personally. This past year, if I knew half.
And so he keeps on continuing, being more adamant. What he doesn't know, and the rest of the room knows, is that Harold Beebe was sitting next to me.
Turned to the camera and I said, for those of you who are at home, get out here to the municipal meeting and be a part of democracy in action.
I'll make sure this stupid thing is on. Okay, before we get started, we'll just go over my few basic rules. If you have a cell phone, shut it off or put it on vibrate. If it goes off during this meeting, I will single you out. The Mountain School, the 8th graders have provided some...
Just spur of the moment, I'm doing this. Did you know going in that they didn't have a moderator, or
no,
it just sort of happened?
You know what it was so we're all sitting in the gym and we're trying to get ready to have this important meeting on the purchase of this building. And they call for floor nominations for a moderator, and everybody's just sitting there. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm thinking, dang, you know, dinner time is rolling around here, folks. I want to get this over. So I was like, well, obviously nobody here, for whatever reason, wants to attempt this. So I threw my hand up. So you can say it was spur of the moment. Yeah. It was more like, okay, we need to get this done. And the minute my hand went up, there was like 13, oh, I'll second that. Oh, you know, then everybody was happy, and we went on, and then all of a sudden I was voted in, and then I was voted in again, and I was like, yeah, okay. And then, you know, people know what to do. They come to you and they flatter you and they inflate your ego, and oh, you're so good at it, because you know what the true reality is they're thinking, if we can keep him in there, we won't get nominated for it ever. So you just kind of keep doing it. I mean, it's not that hard. It's once a year, maybe twice.
Yeah. The Secretary of State handbook, in one part of it, states that the role of the moderator can be seen as referee. Do you agree with that statement, or what?
Sure,
how would you elaborate on the role of the moderator?
Well, you know, the role of the moderator is to facilitate the meeting, to make the meeting happen, you know, at a timely fashion. But again, it's that one time of the year that people get to come out and vent. So you have to strike that balance of letting a person get off their chest what they need to get off, but not get confrontational and not get into a singular argument with a member of the select board or another member of the audience. So you do have to kind of step in there and play that role of referee, so that you kind of keep everybody, you know, that's why they always say to the audience or to whoever's answering a question, you address the moderator. You know, and it's to try to keep that from, so you do. I mean, you know, you get your factions in there, you kind of know who they are, you look at the crowd, you try not to let anything get confrontational, because you are kind of, you're facilitating the meeting, but you're also trying to keep everybody on their side, so to speak, without flipping out.
Yeah. What's the most sort of memorable town meeting story you
Ever?
can tell us? Like, what's going to... You know, when you're an old man and you're going to think, oh, that was the year that such and such happened, or...
Well, I remember one, I wasn't moderator. This was back in what we called the Wild West days of our town meetings. And there was a fella in town who definitely had an anti-police department mentality, and we had a moderator who wasn't particularly forceful, and he stood up. Gentleman stood up out of the crowd, and he started. And before he was done, he had called the police everything from Nazis to you name it. And the whole place erupted. And the next thing you know, somebody is talking about you've never fought under a burning flag, and people are just like starting to stand up, and you know, the whole thing is starting to erupt into this just like mass hysteria. And you know, several other ones stand up from the crowd, and they're like, oh, and I'm just kind of like, well, we better be starting to pull some people apart, because it made an impression on me, because I realized right then and there that you can't very well hold a town meeting where you're doing the town's business if it's going to be WrestleMania 10. Right. You got to, yeah, it's okay to let people vent, but you got to control the situation here. And I mean, it spilled out into the parking lot. It was quite the brouhaha. I mean, and people still to this day, I mean, they'll say, Jesus, do you remember that town meeting?
Has there been a particular issue where you had a hard time, and how do you remain objective? How do you keep your own emotions?
Well, I think a lot of it too stems from coming off from the school board, where I sit on a board where I need to be totally objective, no matter what my personal thoughts or feelings are. Mm-hmm. You know, I have to put that aside. I don't think it's something that you just don't get it overnight. You really have to work on yourself and say, you know, I know this issue's coming up, and I know how I feel, but I am not going to engage in it per se. I know the law does make the effect so you can step down as a moderator, have your say, and step back up. I don't agree with that, because again, as that moderator, you're to facilitate the meeting, and you should be objective to what's going on. But if you step down and you speak about it and then step back up there, now you've given the people in the room that, like, well, I guess we know where he stands kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I look at everybody there, they're always hot. I mean, I'm still a taxpayer here. So there's always a hot button topic that, yeah, sure, it might get me or whatever, but at the end of the day, you know, it's the same thing. You just have to, I agreed to be the moderator, so I'm agreeing to keep myself in check to do what I've agreed to do. Therefore, it's always been one of those things I've always found it not that hard for me to do, to be objective. You know, to look at both sides of something, judge neither who's right, who's wrong, kind of stay in the middle. You know, everybody has their good point, everybody has a bad point, but you can't necessarily lean one way or another. People do what they do. Sometimes it's out of emotion, sometimes it's out of misunderstanding. You can't fault them for it, you know, so therefore you shouldn't be speaking out one way or the other. Yeah. They try, now don't get me wrong, they try to pigeonhole you on what do you think, because they think that whoever is standing there must have some sort of magical insight into what's going to go on, and therefore, ooh, give me your power and I'll be able to make a better decision. No, you're going to make my decision. You need to make your own decision.
What's the toughest part of the job?
The toughest part for me, I think, is that when you do have a contentious issue that you know is going to split and divide your community right down the middle, to moderate over something like that, to watch your neighbors and your community members going at it, you know, getting their points across, and just the tension that'll always be in the air, you know, and trying to be fair about getting around the room so everyone gets to speak once before you go again. That's what I mean, that's when it becomes tough for me, because it's like I don't necessarily like to see John going after Paul because they disagree on one little thing, And again, you know, you step in and you try to cut that sort of personal issues going on between them. But it can be, I mean, one of the things that we had here was when they first brought around the option tax. They were going to put the 1 cent tax on sales in the town, and I mean that meeting was hot. I mean, there were people that were dead set against it. There were people that were for it. There were some that just were like, okay, whichever way it goes, it goes. But that was, as I remember, I think I went around the room like 3 separate times to give everyone a chance to speak, and it was a lot of questioning Robert's Rules of Orders. So that always, you know, I mean, it's nice if you have somebody else in the room that's also familiar with it. So if they need to actually look in a book to find you an answer, you know,
because it can get kind of
because
crazy.
it gets bogged down then, you know, and that day was just, that was probably the worst one I've ever had to be on. I mean, because it just, boy, it was just so emotional, and the constant point of order, point of order, point of order, and I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to get through this. But obviously I did.
Need a cup of coffee after that, right?
Yeah, usually several. And then obviously I'd also learned a little bit too from it. You know, okay, next time, you know, if this happens, at some point, you know, I'm going to push a little bit quicker to say, okay, you've said what you needed to say, we're going to move on.
Right.
You know, I mean, I always try to give people their chance to speak. Sometimes when they make their point, but then they run out of something else to say, they start to
ramble,
and you know, you got to be like, okay, at which point here am I gonna cut these people
without
off?
ticking them off.
Without ticking them off. Right. That's the big thing. Without ticking them off.
That's the secret. So has anything changed over the years with the preparation, or?
The one thing that's changed is that, definitely for myself, is you know, in the beginning it was a little nerve-wracking. Okay, residing over a special meeting is one thing. Now you're going to reside over a town meeting. How are the people going to perceive you? We obviously know everybody here. So a lot of folks knew me from being on the school board. But now you're putting yourself out to other friends that you had seen their shenanigans in the past. Now you're the one that's going to have to control those shenanigans. But getting over that hurdle of having to, you know, make my personal friends understand that I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to put up with it. You are going to be here. You're going to conduct yourself in a manner becoming of a town meeting. Even though we're friends, you come to my house for dinner, whatever, it's not going to hold water in there. So I'd say that's the big change. And I'd say the other big change is, as the years have gone by, the town has had some real hot button topics, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
One of them being, you know, our relationship with the mountain school and everything that goes on there. And that's all changed too. You know, the school has changed, the people have changed, attitudes have changed, everything it's better. It's more relaxed. And so you don't have a room full of angry people right out of the box.
What's the most fun thing about being the town moderator?
Honestly, it's getting to tell people to be quiet. You don't have the floor. To finally be able to make people like be responsible for their actions. No, I'm sorry. We run this by Robert's Rules of Orders. You don't have the floor. You need to be quiet. Because for some people, that is a major challenge to them to be quiet while somebody else is speaking. Just a note. I mean, I really want you to understand. I will not tolerate talking off the floor. I would expect us all to treat each other with respect. When you are recognized, you have the floor, you can have your say then. I will not tolerate the talking off the floor. When I see your hand up, if I make eye contact with you, I've written your name down so I know that you're next in line. And your names are all on a list, so I can then go down through the list so that I don't forget who has their hand up. The next one that had their hand up was Bob Rice. The other thing is seeing everybody that comes out for town meeting. But I'd be lying if I said I don't enjoy, like, ooh, you need to sit down. You don't have the floor. I mean, it's kind of like you're, you know, it just, because sometimes you get frustrated at how we as adults can act, and you think to yourself, man, this is not the example you should be setting for children. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of nice to be able to toe people in line and say, yeah, okay, you know, we're here to get business done, but we're not here to have a bunch of shenanigans and carry on, and yeah, you always got away with this in the past, but you're not getting away with it with me. So, oh yeah.
Upholding the civil discussion, it sounds like it's important to you, yeah.
And the first thing, you know, my first thing that gets everybody is when I open the meeting, and the very first thing I give is a very simple instruction. If you have a cell phone, either turn it off or put it on silent. If it goes off during the meeting, I will single you out so everybody in this room can see who it was that couldn't follow directions. And I just like to look on their faces like, oh my God, we're back in school again.
I was going to say, you sound like maybe you missed your calling as a teacher.
A lot of people have said that, but I don't know. I don't enjoy kids that much.
A lot of these moderators are not young spring chickens. You know, who's the next? You're one of the younger ones.
It's a little easier. I guess what I would also try to do is that I think sometimes the younger people, when they hear Robert's Rules of Orders and they get that big thick book thrown at them and say, here you go. Well, I mean, Jesus, that's enough to scare anybody when you look at that book, you know, and I think I would take the stance of, forget that book. There's a condensed one. You don't need to know everything that's in that book. It's too daunting. Here's a thin one. Your greatest ally in a town meeting is to look at your people and go, if the people allow, it's their meeting. You don't necessarily have to know everything. You can look to your folks and say, what would you like to do? They'll tell you.
Do you think town meeting in Vermont is going to exist in 50 or 100 years?
Probably not. Probably not, honestly. Because at least in our town, the turnout, if you went and you looked at the statistics, the turnout is definitely going this way. You know, it's going down. There's no doubt about it. And it could be a number of any things. You know, most people are so used to the federal government and the state government just basically doing what they want over the top of them, and here you go. Let's face it, our biggest complaint in the state of Vermont is for the federal and the southern state, for the state elections, it's already decided. We haven't even finished counting, and it's already decided what way the state's going. And for a lot of people in this town, they kind of get a what's it matter attitude. Doesn't matter if I vote, 7 o'clock. They'll declare the governor of the state. Doesn't even matter that my vote hasn't been tallied. I think you start to see that a little bit in town meetings where, well, you know, what's the sense? You know, they're gonna do what they want to do. I mean, my biggest thing is with folks, and I get pretty adamant about this. I actually get a little bit nasty about it too. Is after a town meeting and I'll see somebody and they'll come up to me and the first thing they'll do is lay right into you. Like, you did it. And I'll say, well, geez, I don't remember seeing you there. Did you vote? Well, no, what's the sense? Well, shut your mouth then, because I'm not going to listen to you. If you don't vote, you don't have a right to bitch about anything. To me, the person that doesn't vote is giving up a right that's one of the greatest rights in the world, the right to vote, whether your vote wins or not. There are places they don't have that right. You have that right. You don't want to use it because you think, well, it's not going to go my way anyways. Well, it doesn't really matter. As long as you go in there and vote, you're still doing your civic responsible duty, whether you win it or not. And you find that, you know, The other thing is that if there's nothing contentious in a town going on, people are happy to let other people just, you know, go in there. They look at the warning. They see there's nothing spectacular on there. You're going to vote an officer. Here's the budget item. And, you know, will we give GNAT some money? There's nothing contentious. People look at that, you know, it's usually March. We've come out of a hard winter and people are like, Jesus Christ, if I don't have to go out today, I'm not gonna. There's nothing contentious there. I'm not too worried about it. And they just kind of let it go. And I think it will eventually reach a point where, you know, you look at other towns around us like Manchester. I mean, the majority of all their stuff's Australian ballot. It didn't used to be. When I was a kid, it was done off the floor. It was done at MEMS. Grade school, you know, same thing as every town meeting. They've progressed that way. They are a much larger town, I understand that, but it just starts to happen that way. Like, well, you know, and at any time the town, the body of the voters can say, well, you know what, we want to do everything on Australian ballot.
Go like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
You know, and all you do is you have a meeting, much like Manchester does, the night before or whenever, where they discuss the issues, but they don't vote on anything. People just get to come, say what they want to say, and so on and so forth. And it could very well happen, you know. They could say, you know what, for the 50 people that are in this room, wouldn't it be easier if we just move everything to Australian ballot, and you know, you can come in and grumble a little bit, but you know, you're going to vote it and that's going to be it. I do think it is probably something that will eventually, it won't stick around. People do not want to be perceived as anything but a nice, upstanding citizen on that camera. That happens at our select board meetings, you know. Our select board meetings are the most toned down meetings ever, because nobody is going to get upset, irate, start cursing and swearing when GNAT's sitting back there filming the whole thing. And it's the same thing at town meeting. Yeah. You know, and kind of off a little side thing, I mean, I think that, in my mind, is probably the bigger issue of why nobody wants GNAT to film anything. Because it's like, oh God, now I got to act like a responsible adult. I'm going to be on camera, for Christ's sakes. I can't act like I normally would. So, oh, without a doubt, that camera, you know, it kind of makes everybody, it makes people rise up a little bit to a better level of, you know, civility. You know, nobody wants to be seen on there as, ooh, did you see that ogre, what he did to that woman? Jesus. Right, you know, I mean, like I say, I literally use that camera and GNAT as a tool. Because I know that I can use it to help me affect my job of keeping everybody under wraps, because I know that it's there, they know it's there. I know when I walk into a select board meeting here and I have a point that I really need to get across, that it's going to get across because it's being filmed right behind me. If you take it as that, from my point of using it as a tool, but also knowing that, you know, people are going to get to see this and see what their community is all about, I have no issue with a camera being anywhere. It is funny when you're standing up there and you're looking, oh, you know, and your eyes are constantly moving, and you'll see that one person that's just biting their tongue, like, oh, they want to open up, but they're looking at that camera like, is he still paying attention? Is he got that camera pointed at me? You can see it.
On a positive note, however many years from now, when you say, okay, I'm done with this moderator business, what advice would you give to the incoming town moderator, whoever that might
Get to know the people of your community right off the get-go. Get to know the people of your community. Know what, when you're looking out across your community people in that room, know them. Get to know them. Know what worries them moving into the future, or, you know, their thoughts and ideas on their town, and also a little bit of their personality. Is this one an outgoing person? Is this one a shy one, but really has great things to say? Because then you can coax the best out of people, and you can quell the worst. I mean, you can get that mix and you can eventually mix them back together as a community. But you have to know your people. You can't just stand up there like a robot and you know, article number 1 and you have the floor, and you know, it should be a positive experience for everybody in the room, and you should know your people.
Anything else?
No, I mean, I'd say the one thing that I'd say, and I would never admit this to my ex-wife, or never, is that out of all the boards that I sit on and everything that I do in the town, I really do enjoy being a moderator.
Yeah.
It really is nice to be part of something that you can go back in history books and look back into the early 1900s and it was happening. And you're doing it today in 2015, where iPhones and iWatches and drones and everything else are a part of our society, but here we are, people of a town gathered in a room, hammering out our yearly business one day. And that, yeah, I mean, if I give up everything else that I do, I would just continue to be, I would continue to be the moderator.
And the why is the tradition.
It seems kind of neat to me to stand up there knowing, you know, I lived in Winhall since I was 17, so I'm 49 now, and I was registered to vote at 18 in this town, so I've been to town meetings, knowing the moderators that stood up there before me, and knowing the ones that were really good, and thinking that now I'm standing in the same place they are, I hope I can fill their shoes, I hope I can do them justice, you know, and that it is something special. We give away too many of our traditions to modern time.